Welcome to Inside Out and In Between. I'm your host Miriam Sabu, a naturopath and someone who is endlessly curious about what lives beneath the surface of our mental and emotional health. This is a space for the stories we carry, the healing that takes time, and the in-between moments that often say the most. Whether you're here to reflect, feel seen, or just be, you're in the right place. So let's begin. Today I wanted to chat about a big topic that has been coming up a lot lately among the, social media realm of things that's been pushed right now. Like, a lot of people have been creating products that are around the gut-brain axis. So helping the gut basically to improve mental health. And most people really talk about serotonin being made in the gut when it comes to the gut-brain axis. And as we know, serotonin is there to help regulate your mood, sleep, digestion, and a whole bunch of other things. In hindsight, it's only a sliver of what the gut actually does for our mental health. And I'm a big advocate for working on your gut health and focusing on it if you have no answers to why you have mental health issues like anxiety or depression or ADHD, autism. A bunch of mental health issues there's so much research that is linked to an imbalance of certain gut microbes or gut bacteria that can affect your mental health. And so I kind of want to deep dive and cover that today. With the gut-brain axis, there is a connection that involves so many aspects like your nerves and the microbes that are inside of your gut, digestion, hormones, and your immune system, which people don't actually think about. Not only does it all of that, when it is out of whack, can affect your mental health, but also when you're not taking care of your gut, it can then cause other problems like an immune system response, dysregulated hormones, and all this stuff can then add up and lead up to having anxiety that you don't want to have, or feeling depressed or down. And there's a perfect link between when you have your monthly cycle and you bleed, there's a shift in hormones, and that obviously can affect people in many different ways, including PMS, and can cause anxiety and can cause depression in those time periods. Being able to regulate all of that can really help. And one of those ways that you can regulate your PMS or depressive symptoms that you're feeling, or PMDD, is by helping your gut microbiome. And then in turn will help your nerves and your immune system, so on and so forth. It's almost like a domino effect. Once one is out of balance, the rest are just going to collapse and start becoming out of balance. So we kind of want to work on making sure that domino effect doesn't happen as often as it is happening these days. If you experience things like IBS, reflux, and food intolerances, sometimes you'll notice that you'll have anxiety or depression that lingers. It's very hard to get rid of, and you didn't have it before. So that is something that can also linked to you maybe experiencing anxiety or depression. I mean, personally, I've seen so many links with people that have, for example, people that suffer from eczema or psoriasis. When mental health is covered in consults, you see that there's a lot that comes up for people that, go through eczema or go through psoriasis. And it's a struggle between like understanding why this happens. Is it because I'm depressed about the fact that my skin is changing and it's not like reacting the way I want it to, or is it because there is something else deeper going on? And so finding a way, to teach my clients that this is something that happens because if we have a dysbiosis with our gut microbiome, it can then affect, our immune system, but also our skin integrity and our mental health. And once we work on balancing out that gut microbiome, you start to notice that your skin clears up and you also feel better as well. I mean, the integrity of your skin during those moments is obviously going to cause a lot of people distress because it's something that they weren't experiencing before. Now they're all of a sudden experiencing it. And it could be triggered by something like a parasite or dysbiosis in the gut microbiome, a lack of beneficial bacteria. So there are a lot of aspects, again, that can affect so many different things, including our mental health. 90 to 95% of our serotonin is made in our gut, but that's not the only thing that goes on within our gut microbiome and our stomachs, intestines, the whole GIT. That is not the only thing that can, affect our mental health. Serotonin, it stays in the gut and helps also control motility and how the food moves throughout your body. Where it gets interesting is the conversation of tryptophan metabolism, which is when the gut and the immune system are balanced. Tryptophan is then created, and then serotonin and melatonin is then produced, and then will lead to like a good night's sleep and good mood. When the gut is inflamed, tryptophan can go through a specific pathway that can then create a neurotoxin, which is then in turn creating low mood, fatigue, brain fog. When the gut is inflamed and the walls of our guts are not working properly, and the immune system of the gut is not working properly, then we can't create it beneficial tryptophan to then turn to serotonin, melatonin, to help us have better mood and sleep. I won't go into too much science behind it, but basically, good immune system, good gut health can then lead to an adequate amount of tryptophan being produced, which then goes into the serotonin and melatonin pathways and then helps with good mood and sleep. This is why people with chronic inflammation might not respond well to antidepressants or the prescription of antidepressants. Why? Because your body gets tryptophan from your food, and it normally can be used to make the serotonin and melatonin. When you have chronic inflammation, the immune system releases signals called cytokines, which then push tryptophan down a specific pathway that leads to the neurotoxin production rather than serotonin, melatonin balance and production. This will then lessen the amount of tryptophan that is left to make the serotonin to help you feel better. It's like tryptophan is a fork in a road in a healthy gut. It becomes feel-good chemicals. In an inflamed gut, it turns into brain irritants. So it just makes you feel the low mood and all that stuff. So in the first episode that I did, we spoke about the vagus nerve signal pathway. And the vagus nerve is the main part of the communication highway that goes between your gut and your brain. 80 to 90% of its traffic goes from the gut to the brain, not the brain to the gut. It carries information about stretching in the gut. So if you've overeaten, it tells you when you're full. Also, the information about microbial metabolites and inflammation as well. So the vagus nerve improves that digestion and calms your mood as well. And so activating that vagus nerve by humming and doing all the things that we spoke about in episode 1, that will help increase digestion and just improve circulation around the gut. So connection between the gut and the brain is better. A lot of research out there that shows that vagal nerve stimulation is now used clinically for depression and anxiety, which is amazing, as well as epilepsy, which is amazing because we are leaning more towards alternative or helping with alternative medicine, which I advocate so much for. So basically, the vagus nerve is kind of your gut's private phone line directly to the brain, and you can't really mute it, but you can tune it, which is cool. The next thing I wanted to chat about was microbes as chemical factories. So your gut bacteria doesn't just digest food like we think, but it also helps produce beneficial neurotransmitters for your mental health. And also it produces metabolites as well. Your gut can produce something called GABA, which helps with calming your nervous system, and it's made by lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which are probiotics pretty much that we take. If we go to the store, we buy probiotics, this is what they have in them. What comes after that word, so lactobacillus, and then it will have another word, rhamnosus, with a number, or there's so many different types of probiotics, and the important thing is that if you're going out there and finding a probiotic, that the probiotics that are in the actual container that you're buying are for what you need it for. So there's some for eczema to help skin integrity, there's some to help your immune system, boost your immune system, there's some for mental health. And so it's important to really dig in and read and not just take anything for the sake of taking it and hoping that it works the way you think it's going to work. So another thing as well is you can supplement GABA as well, but I recommend having supplementation to help your body produce its own GABA, or things like L-theanine, which I absolutely love, especially for ADHD. Your gut also produces something called dopamine precursors, which have got to do with reward and motivation. And some of those precursors include many amino acids such as L-tyrosine, which is also in foods like almonds and eggs and beans. And so beneficial bacteria, eating eggs, beans, almonds turns into tyrosine. So L-tyrosine helps with stress resilience and mood and so many other things that have got to do with regulating your emotional well-being. Your gut also produces short-chain fatty acids, which are beneficial for their anti-inflammatory, they strengthen your blood-brain barrier, and they also feed colon cells. With the gut health, because it feeds colon cells, nourishes the colon lining, which then maintains the gut barrier and also lowers the gut inflammation. So when it comes to the brain and short chain fatty acids, it influences gut brain access through the vagus nerve and blood circulation. Something called butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid, especially has neuroprotective, anti-anxiety, and antidepressant effects. And you can find short chain fatty acids in resistant starch, such as cooled potatoes or green beans, any fiber-rich legumes, oats, also in prebiotics as well, like PHGG, which is partially hydrolyzed guar gum, and inulin as well. And then also in fermented foods, which support good bacteria, among other things that there is in fermented foods. I find that if there is decreased amount of gut motility and gut function and a lower fiber diet, then there'll be less fuel for your beneficial microbes inside of your gut. And then that can also then lead to less short chain fatty acid production and then more inflammation and then can lead to anxiety. Again, it's a domino effect. So if one's going to go out of balance, then the rest are just going to follow. And all these things that I'm mentioning have got so much to do with another reason as to why your anxiety might be happening or why your depression might be happening. It's a shame as well that there's a lot of insight into mental health out there, but there isn't enough around the multiple different ways that mental health can come about. It's not just something that may be hereditary or genetic or something that you got from someone, because they say you are who you hang around. So you might be hanging out with someone who's anxious or depressed. It doesn't just need to be that. It doesn't just need to be because of a choice that you made. There's so many things that affect our mental health, and I'm just here, I guess, to kind of help you try and find why these things may be happening. And unfortunately, it's very hard to pick up, and the education around the different ways mental health issues may be coming about is so sad. I mean, I'm on the internet, I scroll through social media, and I see that, some people will show like before and afters of just within a year of what ADHD can do to them or what OCD can do to them. And one minute it's they're fine, they're normal, they're going about their life happy, healthy, living day to day, and then all of a sudden something is triggered inside of their body that can exacerbate the way they're feeling, and then they stop taking care of themselves, they stop leaving the house, they stop interacting with people, and all of that in turn is just going to make your symptoms worse. If we can try and go out there and educate around this is what anxiety is, this is what depression is, and this is the whole bunch of ways that it could come about. And I really truly believe that it is not just something that you can slap a band-aid on and say, hey, you're going to have this for the rest of your life and you're never going to be able to get rid of it. Because I'm someone who has gone through this before. I was depressed. I'm still anxious. I get anxious. And to me, there are ways that you can deal with your anxiety and deal with your depression. And I can almost guarantee you that you can get past it without having to use antidepressants or antipsychotic medications, sleep medication, because one, you're forcing your body to do something that it doesn't want to do, it doesn't want to take it, and also there is, as someone who has been on antidepressants before, I know that there is this stigma around having to stay on them when you go on them. And if there is not enough of a push and an education around the long-term effects of these medications, it can lead to really severe problems. And so being able to just sit here and educate people around what anxiety is or what depression is so important for me, because I truly believe that there is another way for us to deal with these situations that come up and these things that we go through. I'm such a curious person, so I have to dig until I find answers for any question that I have. And so I hope this is, come across someone's path and they've connected with it because they are also curious to understand why these things may happening to them. Or there's just curious people out there that are trying to figure out why this is happening to their family members or the people around them. Or you're just curious about, I don't know, just someone that you've crossed path in your life, or you work in disability in mental health and you want to understand it better. I hope this educates you in some way about the alternatives to anxiety and mental health and emotional well-being. I want to talk about the forgotten players of our GIT system that is also important with the gut-brain axis. So we've got our bile and our stomach acid and digestion. These are the basics of our GIT: bile, stomach acid, and digestion. And so we often really skip the basics of these. If bile isn't flowing the way it should, stomach acid is imbalanced, and digestion is imbalanced, we're going to experience the mood dysregulation, the IBS, the reflux. If food isn't broken down properly, the brain doesn't get the raw materials that it needs, especially if the BSD is not functioning the way it should. So stomach acid helps break down proteins into amino acids like the tryptophan and tyrosine. So bile acids help digest fats, and also they carry fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. They act as signaling molecules. They then influence microbes and your mood. Low stomach acid can affect you dramatically, can lead to bloating, and can also lead to nutrient deficiencies because you're not absorbing your food the way you need to. Then it can also affect poor neurotransmitter synthesis. If you're somebody who uses antacids often, you could also experience depressive symptoms, and this also can increase dementia risk later on in life, unfortunately. So if you are someone who needs to take antacids because you're constantly experiencing reflux and heartburn and you're looking into all of this more, keep that in mind that it does have a dementia risk. And then also bile flow helps us digest fats. So poor bile flow can then lower the amount of omega-3s we're getting from our food and then can lead to the low mood. There's also the big link between stress and cortisol and leaky gut. Stress isn't just in your head, it directly affects your gut lining as well because of the overproduction of cortisol. Cortisol makes the gut lining more permeable, which is basically creating leaky gut. Stress can also reshape your microbiome diversity, and certain bad bacteria can flourish in those environments. Leaky gut and stress can reshape your microbiome diversity. And this is crazy to think about, that this is happening inside of our bodies when we're stressed. Unfortunately, a lot of us go through it. And you will also notice that when you are extremely stressed, and you'll kind of lean towards eating the more bad food, you'll also feed that bad gut bacteria more than you should be. Then on top of that, stress is decreasing your gut lining permeability, then causing leaky gut, then causing the mood issues, the dysbiosis of your emotional well-being. It is really important to also work on that leaky gut. And one of those things that we lack in our soils is zinc. Zinc is amazing in helping leaky gut. Collagen is great as well, so increasing the amount of collagen that you have. I always advise to go more naturally made collagen, like bone broth. There's also a brand that makes the fish and beef collagen as well. There's heaps of brands out there. If you have a health professional that you constantly see, you could do a gut microbiome analysis, which they could get a stool sample and have a look at what's going on in your gut and see if you actually have leaky gut, and see if that might be a reason why you're experiencing eczema, psoriasis, or mental health issues. Another thing as well is the link between trauma, which obviously causes a lot of stress, and then long-term microbiome shifts that can then lead to mood disorders. It is very sad that trauma can do such big things and change our lives so dramatically. But with the right information and the right tools and the right processes for the type of trauma that you've gone through, then you'll be able to get by past what has happened and kind of move forward with your life. At the end of the day, you'll go on about life thinking that you're okay, and then something ends up putting like a stop in front of you and just says you need to stop, because if you keep going on, you're just going to get worse, you're going to feel worse, you're not going to be yourself, and a dramatic change inside of your body is going to happen and you're not going to like it. So I suggest always listening to what your body is saying. I experienced really high stress in my final year of uni, and it caused so many problems for me. And now that I've finished, I decided that I wanted to take just a lot of time to myself, because I feel like I lost so much of that during the time I was studying. And even though I was enjoying my life and I would go out to dinners and have a good time with family members, it just wasn't enough. I was suffering through a lot of fatigue that I didn't realize that my body was experiencing. And one of the major signs that happened last year, I mean, among so many other things, but one of the things that was happening was I was getting really, really chronic hives, and there was no explanation for them. Um, and on top of the stress that I was experiencing, I was getting these hives, and these hives were just making everything 10 times worse. I would wake up and my body would be covered in hives. And this was happening for about 5 months. And again, no explanation. But now looking back at what happened, it is gone now. But now looking back at what happened, I can see my body was trying to tell me, wake up. Like you need to stop. You need to put a halt on everything that you're doing and just chill out, because things are about to get wild for you. And I didn't listen. That was one of my signs. That was one of the signs that I was going to get diagnosed with a autoimmune condition a couple months after the hype's coming down. To me, I believe that that was one of the signs of a high cortisol, high stress situation, because I was also noticing that, because when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol spikes. So most of the time, the hives would happen when I would wake up in the morning. So within the hour of when I was waking up in the morning, the time that I would wake up in the morning, the hives would come on and I would start to feel them and start getting itchy and then have to take an antihistamine, which was probably also not helping my gut bacteria. And then I was experiencing so much anxiety during that time because of the stress that I was having from uni, but also the hives that were coming up, and also my own emotional, what am I going to do with my life when I finish, yada, yada, yada. So all of that put so much stress on my body, and I thought the hives went away. And then a few months later, I was finishing uni and my cortisol, I felt like I was getting balance with my cortisol again. And then once you start to feel everything come back to normal, I was experiencing new symptoms of an autoimmune condition. And so it started happening, and basically it was a big shock, and I'm still trying to get past what happened. That's kind of the anxiety and stress that I'm experiencing right now. That's why I've gone so quiet about posting my podcast every fortnight, and it really hit me hard. I feel like this conversation and me doing this is really important because it's a way for me to expel my stress and my anxiety, and a way to also provide you guys with my story and my information and what I've been through and how I've gone through it. Yes, I have anxiety. Yes, sometimes I get depressed and sometimes I don't want to leave the house. But I luckily have such an amazing um, group of people around me that can support me through that time period, or through this time period. And I have so many people around me that understand I'm going through and what, you go through as somebody who's been diagnosed with a condition that is a full life condition, and there's nothing you can do about it anymore, unless new technology comes out, which maybe it will, I don't know. But it was the last thing I was expecting. But I just wanted to kind of let you guys know about my story and like what kind of happened over the course of the past few months and the past year as well, and what's led me to creating this podcast and speaking to you guys about my life, but also my experiences and the things I've learned in uni and the things I will continue learning, and also bringing other people on here as well that can help share their stories and help how they dealt with it, because I can guarantee you that there is someone out there that has some type of little advice that might help you in your journey. And I hope that me sharing it, or someone else that's like around me or is going to jump on this podcast, will be able to put a sliver of hope in your life, or a slight change in your life that you can remember forever. And I hope that helps your anxiety in some way. Well, I hope that helps your mental health in some way. So to wrap things up, I want to kind of recap on what we spoke about. So one of those things is serotonin, being that it is the only real player when it comes to the gut and the brain axis. But again, there's also the nerves and the microbes and the bile and the stress and the digestion and your immune system as well, and how all of it is a domino effect. So the key point is your gut health is a part of your mental health. And a lot more people are catching on to the fact that your gut health is so important when it comes to regulating your mental health. And it's exciting. And there's a lot more research about it being done now. But this is a conversation that we needed to have. In the future, will get into all of this stuff on a deeper level. Gut bacteria and the gut brain axis will probably come up again in the future. But this is something that I wanted to kind of introduce onto my podcast, because the gut brain axis is, to me, one of the most important things when it comes to mental health. And we will get into more detail later on about all these other things that have got to do with the gut and helping the brain. I wanted to kind of leave you with a little reflection for yourself, and that is, if your gut and brain are in constant conversation, what kind of messages are they sending to each other? If your gut and your brain are in constant conversation with each other, what type of conversation are they having today? I hope it's a deep one. And I hope you go off with something that you learnt today that you can implement in your day-to-day life that will support your mental health and support your emotional well-being. Thanks for joining me today, and remember that your mental health is a journey. It's not just a destination. That every little small step that you take counts, no matter how small or big it is. If today's conversation resonated with you at all, share it with someone who you think might need it too. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next episode.